Hello, friends and fashion lovers. Welcome and welcome back. Thank you for all your love and support, and thank you for clicking on this video. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to draft, cut, and stitch this lovely dress neatly. If you're interested, please keep watching. To get started with the dress, you will need a fashion fabric. I use damask, a plain fabric, a zebra, a lightweight fusible interface, and a lining. So right here, I have marked 1 inch for my zipper allowance on my pattern paper. I'll be drafting both the front and the back. In the description box, there will be a link to standard measurements for kids. So to start with my pattern drafting, I am marking the shoulder line first. Then I'll mark the bodice length next. On the shoulder line, I'll mark half the shoulder width measurement minus half an inch. You want to mark half the shoulder width measurement minus half an inch. Then mark your armhole depth. So just make sure that you scale according to your markings at that point. And at the edge of the armhole depth, mark a quarter of your round chest measurement plus ease. A quarter of the round chest measurement of the child plus ease. Then go ahead and connect to form a armhole. Next is to mark quarter of the round waist measurement. I am using the same as the chest. So now that you're done with this, it's time to mark the off shoulder. On the screen is a chart I like to use for off shoulder when it comes to children. For a 6-year-old, I am using 1.5 inches. So whatever you had marked for the off shoulder, please double it to form the neck depth. The off shoulder is basically half the neck depth. You can connect this thread, you can use a curve. Next is to mark the cape width. So the width of the cape you would love to have, your desired width, go ahead and mark. Mine was 2.5 inches. After marking, do well to connect your markings. Then make sure on a straight line you mark quarter of the overarm measurement. Make sure the overarm measurement is not too tight and not too loose. Just mark quarter of it right there. And whatever you have as the overarm measurement, take away 1.5 inch to mark the upper part of your cape. So that way you can decide to have this cape in a curve form or in a straight form. I prefer a straight form since I don't want to have any seam running in the middle of the arm. So go ahead and write your notation that the front will be cut on fold, while the back you'll cut 2 pieces for the back, 2 times for the back. Then you can add your seaming allowance. But before then, I just love a slight curve by the side of my bodice. So I just decide to go up by half an inch and connect the curve before adding my seaming allowance. So at this point, the pattern is basically ready. So it's just to cut it out. So we'll make the necessary adjustments to this pattern before cutting it on fabric. So if you have cut it out, now place a pattern paper and trace the cape line or the neckline of your pattern. So I'm using a tracing wheel to trace mine. But if you don't have a tracing wheel, don't worry, I have you covered. Just use your pencil, pen or marker and just follow the neckline. And when you get to this point, all you will need to do is take your measuring tape and measure that your desired cape and continue marking it all the way. Please, I did not include the back zipper allowance in this stressed out cape that I just marked. After that, don't forget to add your seaming allowance. Then you can adjust the pattern like so. Please make sure you don't include a zipper allowance, but you can add your seaming allowance. I'm going to add seaming allowance while cutting mine out. So the front will be cut on fold, and I decide to join both the back and the front cape. So I would have one piece cape. I won't have two separate one. So I'm going to be having one piece. So I decide to join the back and the front by the side. So now that our pattern is ready, it's just to place the pattern and cut your fabric. While cutting your fabric, please don't forget to add the necessary seaming allowance to it. So right here, I have my pieces all cut out. The front piece is cut on fold with the lining to go with, and I cut two pieces for the back and also with the lining, the cape. I cut two pieces of the same fabric. I added seaming allowance to my cape. Then for the skirt part, you can decide to make it 2 times the waist measurement, 3 times the waist measurement, but I did mine on the fashion fabric is 2.5 times the waist, while on the lining is 2 times the waist measurement. To start with the stitching, I want to have a little bit of band in front of my bodice. So the band that I choose here is 5 inches when it comes to the height. That means it will be 2.5 inch when it's unfold. And the width is the width of my front bodice. So I'm going to go ahead, notch the center and stitch that in place. After stitching in place, I'll give it a good press and then it's ready. So next is for me to place my front lining right side facing my front fashion fabric. So you want to have them right side facing. Now it's time to go ahead and sew the arm hole. Just the arm hole. So I decide that I want a back tie. I am going to be prepping the back tie soon. So I would fix to my bodice. So the back tie could be as long as you want or as short as you want. It is going to be fixed on the bodice later. So after stitching the armhole, go ahead and notch. After notching, turn it right side out. So this is my right side out. So I'm placing the back borders on the front borders, making sure that the right side are facing each other. So I go ahead and open it, making sure the lining is facing the lining and the fashion fabric is facing the fashion fabric. And I'll stitch my borders by the side. While stitching, I included my back ties, and my bodice is basically halfway ready. Don't forget to leave about half an inch down there so that you'll be joining your bodice to your skirt. So I'm going to go ahead and gather my skirt piece now. Then I'm going to gather my lining as well. After gathering, make sure you place the skirt and the bodice right side facing each other. Go ahead and pin that in place because you will be stitching the lining to the lining and the fashion fabric to the fashion fabric. After stitching, you should have a dress that looks like this. See, it's coming together. Now it's time to attach the zipper. I used an invisible zipper tooth, and on the first installation this is what it looks like. I only attached it to my fashion fabric. So next is just flip your lining over. So when you flip your lining over, make sure that you cover the teeth right side facing. Go ahead and stitch that in place. So that's just basically how I stitch my zipper. Just use the lining to cover the fashion fabric. If you turn it right side out, you should have a very neat finish, like so. You can see the raw edge is concealed. Now it's time to stitch close that center back of your lining. So when you're done stitching close the center back, don't forget to roll hem the bottom of your skirt. Just roll hem your garment right there. So this is it. I have rolled hemmed it and I've stitched the center back. So what I'm going to do is find the center of my front bodice. I am just going to place a notch right there. And I'll be setting aside this piece so I can start working on the cap. So this is my cap. Don't forget, I cut the front unfold. So using my pattern. So don't forget the part that is facing up. You can indicate that so that you don't get confused. The front is cut on fold and it's going to be facing this direction that I just indicated. I have got a lightweight fusible interface for my cap and it's the exact measurement of my pattern. But on the fashion fabric, I decided to add seaming allowance to it. So it's time to fuse my lightweight fusible interface. Please, I use a lightweight fusible interface. So all you do is just place the lightweight fusible interface and use your iron and fuse it. After fusing it, you should have something like this. It's time to place it right side facing. You are going to stitch the wider path. So just stitch it and stitch the shorter part as well. Don't forget to leave that inner part open. Do not stitch everything. After stitching the wider part that I indicated, just go ahead and notch. You can cut back on the seaming allowance if you had quite a seaming allowance. Then go ahead and turn it right side out. Please, if you haven't subscribed, do well to click on the subscribe button and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. So this is it after turning it right side out. So I'm going to just go ahead and notch the center. I have given it a good press, so don't forget to press it before you proceed. So I had already notched the center front of my bodice. So it's time for me to place the center front of my cap on the center front of my bodice. I am just going to quickly pin it in place. So you want to make sure that it fits nicely. So right there, I am going to notch where the bodice stops. So you want to put this notch. Please be careful when you're doing this. You can untag it first. I decide to, clip it in place before notching it. Then for the back, you open your zipper and place it just the way you would like it to fit and notch as well. So after notching, you know the part that will go on the dress. So the part that is not going on the dress, go ahead, turn it right side facing, and you are going to stitch that part. To turn it right side facing and stitch the part. And when you're stitching, please do well to stitch using only your allocated seaming allowance. Only your allocated seaming allowance is what you stitch with. After stitching, turn it right side out. On both sides, you can give it a good press, but just turn it right side out. Your cap should look something like this. You can see. You can go ahead and press in one side of this seaming allowance or the open side. Just press in one side. But I didn't bother pressing in one side. You want to fix your cap. If you fix it like this, you're going to have not so good finishing. So what you do, make sure on the inside of your bodice, you open your cap. You can see what I'm doing. You open it and you pin it in place. I am doing this only on one side. I am not just stitching the two together. So just open it and make sure that you're placing it on the inside. I'm going to be repeating the same step for the back. You can see how I am placing it just on the inside. You want to pin it and you are going to stitch it. So just make sure that while you're stitching it, you are not just stitching the two together. You are only stitching only on one layer of the cap. and you're doing the same for the back. Just a quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified each time I upload a new video. And please do well to check out other of the videos as well. Thank you. So here is how it looks after stitching. So you are going to push in the raw edge. You can iron it, but you're going to make sure that you tuck that raw edge in to conceal the raw edge. You are going to hand stitch it. You are not using your sewing machine. You are going to use your thread and needle and hand stitch it. Just hand stitch it the way you possibly can and as neat as you can. So that is how you finished the final seam. That way you have everything nicely done. So yeah, repeating the same step for the back as well. This is the off shoulder on my model. Yes, this is how it sits on my model, and this is the finishing in the real garment. I want to say a very big thank you for watching to this point and see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.